Yeah, let's start with a little bit of that. Arms behind the back, just to straighten the spine a bit. And now let's try the stick. I want to twist, but feeling the resistance. So I twist one way. So I'm feeling the action that's doing what I'm doing, but I'm also feeling the muscles that are trying to resist it. So I'm turning to the left. So there's a muscle working, it's contracting in order to pull me to the left. Now that is also stretching a muscle the other side. So I want to feel the muscle being stretched as well, so that when I release the contracting muscle, that stretched muscle will automatically start pulling back. And then the same idea, but tipping. So these muscles are contracting and these muscles are being stretched. And now, same idea, but with the belly and the back. So basically the breathing. So pulling the belly in and then pushing the belly out because the back is tightening the lower back. The muscles in my belly and the muscles in my lower back are working with each other. You want to be with the takeover. So as one muscle takes over from the other, that's where we need to pay attention. So that there's no slackening at that point. Now let's just try just a bit of that one where we get the two arms fighting. One hand is trying to stop the other one from straightening. So I'm pushing the two wrists against each other. So one's trying to break free and escape, and the other one's trying to contain. I sort of have to switch my mind quickly between the two constantly to keep them both active. And then we just want to switch them round, so bring the inside to the outside without the tension releasing. So it's tricky. You just got to roll. Switching around again. What we want to feel is that when we maintain this pressure, these two parts of my body fighting against each other without me wanting to freeze it into a stable system, then it stimulates a lot of internal movement, a lot of activity. There's a lot of energy generated. And this is like the Tai Chi alchemy. So I'm using muscular effort to produce a more refined energy, an energy that I can get circulating, coiling through my body. And then just swapping around one more. And now let's just try the one where we just push the hands together. So this can be as strong or as gentle as you like. I'm just letting the pressure build up a little, pushing one hand into the other. and then just linking the fingers together. Keep the pressure on, and then there's a point where you release the pressure and start pulling instantly. What enables the energy to build up is your ability to just keep your mind with it. And then linking fingers and pulling again. So let's stand up. Okay, so the same way here, I've got my bicep fighting my tricep. When we're standing and riding horse, we want the same idea. It's not simply the strength in my quads fighting gravity. My quads are fighting my hamstrings. So both sets of muscles are sort of locked in together all the time, and they're sort of wrestling and tussling with each other. And so a simple, slow movement can be a real intense situation because the two muscles are almost balanced. So we just want to go up and down now, but the difficulty is to go down by tensing the hamstrings rather than simply releasing to gravity. So I go down by tensing these muscles. So maybe if you just touch them, then you can feel whether they're tightening. Obviously, these quads are tightening to bring me up, but can I get the hamstrings kicking in to bring me down? And it feels very different. To just releasing to gravity. If I want to tighten this hamstring, I have to throw the knee out. It sort of helps somehow. When I push the knee out here, the hamstring naturally contracts. So this is just the working from the movement of the knee. So to go down, this knee is trying to do this. And then this knee kicks. It's easier if you get one working at a time. But the hamstring bends the leg. And when I activate it, it's such a big muscle. It's very quite dominant when you get it going. It activates all the bending muscles in the body. So these muscles and the muscles in the hands that tend to make fists and the muscles here. So they all tend to kick in sympathy with the hamstring. The same as when I straighten my legs, everything straightens. My spine straightens, my arms straighten, my fingers straighten, my toes straighten. It helps if you think in terms of trying to use your feet to pull the ground towards you rather than pulling yourself down. And then let's just relax that. That's brilliant. And just feeling the belly and the back interacting. Back contracting, belly being stretched. Belly contracting, back being stretched. I want to feel the muscles involved in producing this movement rather than simply the movement itself. belly's stretched. And then I just let it kick in. I let it start contracting. And then I feel that forcing the back to release and stretch. Belly's contracting, but so are the hamstrings. So I'm being drawn down, same as my hands are curling up into fists. My biceps are working. And then the lower back starts working. This will bring me up a little bit and out. Just bring it back. Now let's try moving from leg to leg. So we know that to start the movement, I want to bend the empty leg. This is the empty leg, so I bend it. So it's active, it's actively pulling me by using my hamstring to bend the leg. Not just my hamstring, but my toes are curling like this. So again, trying to make like a fist with the foot, and that's grabbing the ground. And I pull across. Now, once I get more than 50% of the way here, the leg is having to behave as a support now rather than something that's pulling me. So now the quads have kicked in to support me. So this is what we want to try and feel, the leg changing function when it goes from empty to full. So when it's empty, it can pull me, it can actively pull me into it. But then when it starts to become full, now it has to become a support. Effectively is straightening now to stop me from falling down. So now it's very much this muscle here that's working, and then this hamstring, and then this quad, and then this hamstring. Pulling with the leg, and then I start supporting, and that enables the other one to start pulling. Feel the straightening of the leg to get everything into the other leg, and to stretch the hamstring so that it has to kick in and start pulling. So our unit of activity is a straightening followed instantly by a bending. This is like the entering in order to yield. I extend in order to contract and pull. And normally we think of the use of the leg as, you're bending it in order to straighten it. You're bending it to sink into it, and then you straighten it to launch yourself out of it. So that will get movement okay, but the movement will tend to be a little bit undirected. So that would be the use of the body of a clumsy person. My sister's very clumsy. If there was like a cup of tea on a counter, chances of her reaching it and picking it up, she's more likely to knock it off, because she's just got, she's just careless. So if you're launching yourself from the feet all the time, then you're never sure where you're going to land. So here we're really picking where we want to land. That's paramount in our mind. So like you're really sort of picking your way through a rocky terrain, and you have to be really careful in case you twist your ankle. So your mind would be very much with that place where you're going to place your feet. And your body would just be taking care of itself, really. I straighten and I pull. And And this is exactly how we move when we walk, and especially when we run. Especially if like you're running cross country and you're having to keep an eye on the ground where your feet are landing. So when we walk, we reach forwards with the foot, we choose the ground we're going to claim, and then we pull it towards us, and then the other one can lift up. So what I want to feel here is this muscle, the quad, really straightening my leg, almost like it's going to hyperextend, it's going to bend backwards almost, that's the feeling. Kicking in the back, the hamstring. I want to feel them working together. I need to use my quad to get the hamstring kicking in. And I want to feel that as I come into this foot and my quad starts working to support me, that allows the hamstring in the other leg to contract. So it keeps me close to the ground and it turns me. Now just turning, really concentrate on the hips. My shoulders are with my hips. So when we start off in the hips, what tends to happen as you repeat and repeat is the mind comes more and more up into the shoulders and the hands, the arms and the head, because that's where it's used to being. What we would like is for it to travel the other way. So I'm turning the hips, but I want to feel how that is coming from the ground, from my 2 feet playing with the ground. In exactly the same way that we were doing the previous exercise. and just let it go. Again, trying to feel it coming from the legs rather than simply from the hips. So this leg is pushing me, and then it's pulling me, pushing me, pulling me. So what we'd like is to really be able to distinguish between the hips and the waist. So if I'm turning the hips, it's very sort of mechanical. I'm feeling these bones here, and I'm just moving them around, trying, if anything, to stay as relaxed as possible. So obviously the movement is coming from the legs, but I'm very much conscious of this structure just turning in relation to the spine in the middle. This would be very much like sitting meditating, where everything is still as much as possible. And you're just very much aware that you're aware. You're aware of your consciousness. And this is what's happening here. We're trying to stay as peaceful as possible. And we're just aware of this movement, this circular movement that's making the world move around us. So like a sense of floating, sort of floating around. So this is what we get when we don't need really to put much effort into what we're doing. It's quite easy. This action is easy. My mind can be elsewhere when I'm doing it. So we're keeping the mind here with the awareness, but my mind doesn't really need to be with the muscles that are working because they're not having to work terribly hard. The waste comes in when we have to start being with the musculature. So the waste was much more not what we were doing previously when we were moving from leg to leg. So if you just start feeling the legs, and now this leg is having to contract to pull me round, and then it starts supporting so that this leg can extend and contract. So as soon as you start to be with the body that's working in this natural and very healthy muscular way, then it will tend to kick in this area, the belly and the back, and that's really just the waist. So as this hamstring contracts here to pull me, so does this side of my belly. As this leg straightens to push me round, so does this part of my back. So when I become very conscious of the muscles that are involved in turning me, that's when the waist is there. Because you can feel it's beginning to come from here. It's beginning to come from above the hips. There's this sort of churning battle going on all the time in the belly, between the stomach muscles and the back muscles. So the waist is centered here, but really it reaches all the way down to the ground and all the way up to the top of your head. So it includes the arms as well as the legs. So let's bring it back. So when you turn the waist, you tend not to turn very far, because no sooner have you started turning one way than the other way is wanting to pull you back. I remember once there was a student who left the center and went and studied somewhere else, and he came back just to say hello, really. But he said when he got to this new school, what they were saying all the time is, you're turning too much. And I suspect it was because he was turning from the hips. What will tend to do is you'll be a little bit double weighted. What we want is this feeling that you can turn one way, but it springs back, this sense of the Tai Chi master being sprung steel. As soon as you're pressured, you spring the other person off. So those circles are very small. To begin with, we need to practice with really broad, long circles, just to get the flexibility in the body. But then we need to build the muscles around that. And those muscles will tend to prevent you turning so much, but your turns will just be a bit more meaningful. So let's try with 1 foot forwards and just doing this exercise with the 2 circles, but with a different mood. So we're used to sort of doing this, just getting that sort of freedom of movement, big movements, which will tend to throw the mind out of the body. Okay, it may throw the mind into a really good space, peaceful, aware space. But now we just want to get the mind very much with the working of the body. So I'm doing these 2 circles, but I don't get carried away with it. They're really interacting. So what we have to try and do is just get used to using the legs correctly. So this sense of pushing, then pulling. What it basically means is that you're never in the middle. And so if we were doing this exercise like this, we'd be in the middle, and I'll be doing 2 circles like this. But now I want the sense that I've got this leg, I've got this leg, and I can either be here or here. I can't be in the middle. So if I'm here and I want to go here, I have to suddenly get there. I have to suddenly catch the ground, because I don't have the luxury of just being able to travel across, because like Dr. Chi used to say was, when you go from one foot to the other foot, there's a point where you're double weighted. So you have to leap over that point as quickly as possible. I've got this action going, but it's very much from these 2 feet that don't have a middle. If you like, my 2 feet are on the ground. the tightness that's around here that's producing this really controlled minimal movement is sucking my mind down there. My mind can't be thrown out into its peaceful state. It's here with the labor, with the working. And it's difficult because it's not physical, it's a mood, really. It's almost like a mood of depression. It's like, physical labor. When you start off doing, you think, oh, this is great, I'm using my body. And your energy comes up. After a while, it's just hard work. And then you need a different mind to get through it. That really sort of determined mind that just knows how to be efficient, doesn't get carried away with itself and get exhausted. It can just pace itself. So that's a different mind, a mind we're not used to. And now let's try and put forwards. Feel the cross energy. So when I use the right hand, sorry, my left hand, I want to be kicking from here and vice versa. But I want to be able to connect from leg to leg without moving. I don't need to do this and this. I can just be pinned by my two legs. So now the hamstring is kicking in here to get this hand active and forwards. And then this hamstring kicks in here. So this hamstring kicking in, it's part of my waist. It's part of this. So my legs working in this way are very much part of my waist. It's just the waist happens to be where it's centered. That's the controlling aspect, but the whole musculature of the body is required. Okay. And now let's try just a little bit of this one. So the root, I want to sink through the heel and into the ground. So this is the activity of the weighted leg, really. It can penetrate the ground like a needle going from my heel down into the ground. And that needle is injected by this muscle, my quad, trying to straighten against the sinking. So I'm sinking, I'm getting lower, but at the same time, this leg is trying to straighten in order to inject the heel down. So it's very active. So this is the activity in the passive supporting leg. So it's muscular work, very much of the body and very much of the ground, of the earth. It's dirty work. You feel how it makes you want to sort of crouch. It's the same with circles. When we produce circles, we tend to want to sort of sink into them. So almost like the opposite of when we're sitting meditating and we're just trying to get that vertical spine. So the two belong together. So the sinking will tend to compress you. And then just a little bit wider. The same thing really, but now just figure of 8. So now everything's coming in. The use of the legs with this pulling, with this wrestly tussle with the ground. Feet very active. And the movement's quite small. And my movements are too broad. There's a sense of slipping, sliding, and it's just a bit too easy. It's a real problem with movement. Whenever we move, we tend to come up. We tend to almost lubricate the ground so that we can get a sense of sliding to make it easier for ourselves. We want to do the opposite. We'd like to sort of really make that ground sticky so that we have to work to get the slightest movement. Otherwise, we lose the root when we move. And this is just the waist. The waist is really just the two sides of your body wrestling with each other. They're doing opposite things. This way of working is very much something John got from Dr. Panizzi. So he was the Harley Street doctor that had the Italian father and an Icelandic mother. And his Icelandic grandfather had been a wrestler and a weightlifting champion. So what Dr. Pinizzi had done, he taught himself to bring an element of isometrics into everything that he did. So every action that he engaged in, when his mind was on it, he imagined resistance. So John said even when he was signing his name, he'd be imagining that someone was trying to stop his wrist from moving, so it'd like be really hard work. And that's the feeling here. You're imagining resistance, but you're also creating it with your own body. The two sides are working against each other. Because it's so easy just to get them working for each other like this. And then it's just a meaningless exercise. This feeling that, when you get the muscles kicking in like this, so the hamstrings are a little bit present, trying to pull you down, the quads trying to push you up, but not explosively with this sort of smouldering activity. It just reels you in. The mind can't come out in a sort of free, relaxed way. It just keeps you together. They're very much like the labourer. When he gets home from work in the evening and barely move, and just this air of heavy depression. Like the poetry of Gerard Manley Hopkins. Yeah, sort of heavy, it's muscular. It's like when we start working and there's always this sense of, oh no, not this again. This is the home. So this is where we're being drawn to all the time. And this is the little holiday just got this movement going, and that's just the waist. Just think of that as being the waist. And I've got this movement going, it will turn me, but not a sort of gliding turn like this. It'll really be from the ground, and it'll be coming all the way up my body. You know, John's image of the wetsuit, the elastic wetsuit that inhibits everything we try to do. So everything that we try to do requires work, physical work, including breathing. So when I breathe in, I have to really work to expand the chest. It's wanting to pull back all the time. And then when I suck my belly in, it's wanting to expand out.